Welcome back to part 3 on 20 essential Google Sheet functions. Number 10, trim function. And there's two ways to get the trim function. That function is also used for cleaning up your data. So I have this, let me just maybe hide this column so we can see the data better. So I have this list of employees, and you can see that there's spaces in between first name and the start of the cell, and then there's spaces between some middle initials and so on. So it's very data that needs cleaning up, basically. So one way to clean up this is basically trim the white space. If you use the trim function, you just specify the text, close the parenthesis, and now you can just copy it over and it cleans the data for you. Now, with this way of using the trim function, you basically still have the original data here, and here is the trim, the cleaned up data. Sometimes, you know, in your data, whenever you're working with data, you do want to either make a copy of certain data that you're pulling from somewhere. So later on, if you want to double check things, you have somewhere to reference, because there's another way of using the trimmed function. If you actually select the column or cell or what have you, and if you go to data, and data cleanup, here are some things you can do with your data to quickly clean it up. We can remove duplicates, but we can also trim white spaces. If I do that, it's telling me trimmed white space from 12 selected cells. And you can see that it's identical, but I don't have anymore the original data. So you want to be aware of that. But this is a quick way of cleaning up your data in Google Sheets. Number 11, unique and sister function COUNTUNIQUE. Let's say you have a data set and we have the salary information here with our employees there listed, and I want to find out how many, to make sure there's no duplication here. And I want to show you these ones in blue. So I have this employee right here, but then I retyped that employee information down there, but I removed the spacing issue that's right here in row 11, just to show you how the formula, the function works and what you have to be aware of. So I'm going to use the unique function here, and I can specify a range that I want to check for uniqueness. So you don't go one by one necessarily, but you can specify actually the whole range across down the column, and close parenthesis, enter, and it actually will retype anything that's just unique. And you can see here that it did remove the last employee because it's identical to the number 17 employee, the 34 and 17 are. However, employee 33, because there were no spaces in this cell versus there were spaces in that cell, it did not find as duplication. So what you want to do always before you use some of these functions, you might want to use the trim function to clean up the data, to make sure that the way the names or whatever the information is laid out in the correct format, because some of these functions, they do count spacing as a difference. So that's something to be aware of. Now, another way to use the unique is actually if you click on the column and go to data cleanup, you can click remove duplicate, and this is kind of doing the same thing, and it's just asking you, does it have the header has row, does the data have header row? And I say yes, because it does specify name, and then it's asking you where you want to remove the duplicate. And now if I just selected the column C, it will just remove it from that column. So you want to be aware that, look what's happening. The salary now, it's not corresponding correctly necessarily to our data, to our list of names. So you want to be aware what you're doing. So that option, I would have to select those two. But let me just see what I have here. Oh, I have some hidden information here. So I'm going to select these two, these three columns, and now I'm going to say data cleanup and remove duplicate, and now it's all at the same time. all the columns, because they need to correspond to each other, remove duplicates. So each of them, even if it's the same name but it has different email address or salary, then it will not consider as duplication. And now you see it's just removed that one name. So you want to be aware how you using these shortcuts if they're making sense. Now the count unique, this basically will count for you how many data points are unique. So you would just say count unique, and now you can specify a range, and I'm going to specify a range, close parenthesis, and now it's telling me 33, but we know that actually it should be 32 because two of the blue names are double. It's just one of them has spacing, the other one doesn't. So the same thing, you want to first clean the data. So I'm going to go data, clean up, trim one white spaces. So right now, right away, it did find the two duplication because the names were cleaned up. So that's the way to use the unique and count unique functions, as well as data cleanup option. Number 12, split function. There's two different ways of using split function. One is by using it as a function with formula, and another way is by using the data cleanup option in the top menu, and I'll show you how to split text to column. That's the option, the same as split function. But let's just use the formula first. I have employee names, and I have a mixture of first name, last name, and sometimes first name, middle initial, and a last name. And I want to separate into first, middle, and last. So you just start typing the formula, split, then you specify the text. Then you have to give the formula what kind of delimiter you want to use for the split function. I want to use space and close parenthesis and enter. And then you can just drag this down and it will copy down. Now you can see that it's doing okay job, but it still has, in some cases we have the name spread over 3 columns. In other cases we have over 2. It depends if there's a middle name or not. So you would have to copy this as volume, because right now this is as a formula, and then maybe move it manually, some of these last names over one column. And I'm going to give you another example where you can see this better, how this works, and we will go over the couple of other options that the formula has. So right now we just use the 2 options in the formula. So the formula is like, I have this average home prices information here, but you can see that the data, it's all in one cell, and I would want to separate into different months and then the amounts of average price for different region. And I have these different delimiters in between some of the data points. So I have %, at sign, and then percentage sign. And I want to show you how this works with the 2 other options available in the formula. So the first one, we're just going to use exactly how we did it before. We're going to say split, and then we're going to select this, the text. And now here, I'm going to actually specify the 3 different delimiters, or actually 4, that I have in this text. So I'm going to have a space, ampersand, and then at sign, and then percentage sign, close the quotation mark. Then by default, the third option is split by each, meaning, do you want to split by each delimiter? So if there's multiple, you want to treat them all individually, or are they all as one? And so I'm going to say true. They should be used separately. And the last option is, do you want to remove any empty text if there's multiple delimiters? So I'm going to say true. And in this case, I'm going to copy this over to the two examples with the average prices as well as the month name. So you can see here that it treated the limiter between the name, which is November 2021, there's an ampersand. It separated these dates from me. Then it's also separated when I see at sign and percentages and a space. So I have it kind of month and a year separated. Here in this case, we just have ampersand and percentage sign. So it just put the prices in different columns. So now let's see what happens if we change this. And let's, for the second statement, split by each, we're still going to say yes, split by each, but now we're going to eat space in between multiple delimiters. So in this case, you can see that it starts the same as in previous case, but then it starts adding spaces because then we have the add sign and percentage delimiter here. So it's adding one space for multiple delimiters. So you see how the data it's more spread out. And let's say with the numbers, it's the same thing because we have add sign and percentage, and it's saying, okay, so now you want to have an empty space in between multiple delimiters. Now let's see how this will look if we change and say, treat the multiple delimiters as one and don't add any empty space. So in this case, this really didn't work well because there is no case where we have all three delimiters together. We have at and percentage sign together, but we don't have, ampersand, space, at sign, and percentage sign together. So that's why it's copied it over into one cell. So it didn't really do anything really for us because there was no case to be found. And it's going to be the same case if we do the third and fourth option as false, because again, we can't find it in these situations. So in this case, if I want to still clean this up, maybe the option would be to actually not use the first delimiter as the ampersand. I would just remove it. So then I have the month separated and it looks much nicer. So sometimes you might have to actually maybe do twice the formula to split it as you would like. And let me remove it from this case. And let me remove it from this case. So now you'll be able to find it that because before there was no case of having all the delimiters together. And let's see what happens in the last case when we remove it. The same. So sometimes you might have to play around with what delimiters you're using and some of the options, the third and fourth options, if you want to treat them all, the delimiters together or separately. And then let's go back to the employees area right here, and I want to show you the other way to use the split function. It's actually not using it as function, but using it as an option on the menu. So if you have this data right here, you can just select it, and now you can go to data, split text to column, and it will ask you the same question. What kind of delimiter do you want to use? You can just say detect automatically, or you can say specify custom, or the ones that are by default, comma, semicolon, period, space. I'm going to say space, and it separates quickly for me. However, be aware that the original data is over. It's copied over, so you no longer have the original data. With the function, you still have the original data, and then you have the function and the data in the next column. So be aware that you're copying over the original data. So that's the way to use split function and option in Google Sheets. Number 13, LEN function. So this function can calculate how many characters you have in a text or string. So if you use it, maybe let's say we have the employee's name here, and we know that some names that are longer, there's a certain amount of characters. You will have to trim it for their employee email address or something like that, or some database. So let's say we would say equal len, and then we would select the text. close parenthesis, and then it tells us how many characters you have. And this function is also used with a couple of other functions that we're going to talk about it briefly shortly, which is the left and right function. But this is the way to basically use it to calculate the number of characters that you may need to know for some string or text. Number 14, left and right function. And these are used to basically, let's say if you have some kind of text and you want to just pull data from the text to separate it. And it's kind of similar to our split into a column option, and I'll show you the difference. So let's say I have this information here, state, and the state is spelled out, and then it has abbreviation, and I just want to have the abbreviation showing up. So one way to do it, so I don't have to do anything manually, because that's the point of using Google Sheets, right? Not doing things manually, is use equal right, and now I'm going to specify the text, and now I'm going to select how many characters do I want to have on the right to show up in this column. And I know that the abbreviation for state it's 2 characters, so I'm going to say 2. And now I can quickly, drag it across, and I have quickly all the abbreviation of the state, and maybe there's like a city and a state, listed for addresses. So this is like a useful thing to quickly be able to later on sort the data by state and so on, versus city and state, or state spelled out and so on. So this is the way to do it for the right. Now let's say for left, if I want to have the full spelled out state, you have to use actually the function we just briefly talked about before, which is the length function, because each of the state has different number of characters. It's hard to say how many characters on the left. I cannot say equal left and specify, let's say 15, because okay, this is too many, so maybe 7. Okay, so this worked for this state, but if I drag this formula, it's not going to work, because some states are shorter, some states are longer, so I can see issues with that. So how do I know how many letters to the left? The trick is to first to say use the text on the left, but before I say how many, I'm actually going to use the len function to calculate how many. So I'm going to say len, calculate the string, and then you want to minus 4 characters, because the state is 2 characters, then space and comma, that's 2 more, and close parenthesis. And now if I drag this, now I can see that even the states that were 2 words like South Dakota and stuff, all the states are correctly spelled out. Now you could think, okay, maybe we can use the split function. So if we use the split function here, we could maybe take this data here. I'm going to copy this, put it here, and I'm going to say data, split text to columns. So now it also did very nicely for us. Number 15, using the lower, upper, and proper functions, which are basically functions to clean up your text. So you have data and maybe you copy it from over, and like in our case here, we have some names listed for the employees in all capital letters, some are in lowercase, some are mixed of it. So you want to clean it. You don't want to do manual work, because manual work also can create errors. So we can use these lower, upper, and proper functions to clean up your data quickly. If I use lower, it means all the text in the string will be in lower letters. So it's going to be like this. And then if I use the upper formula, it will be all in capital letters like this. Then I can also use the proper. It's a proper sentence formula. It will capitalize first letter of each word. Now I wish they had a sentence function for Google Sheets, because sometimes, if you have a longer string, you just want to capitalize the first letter of it, but nothing else. So there's no option like that. But this is the way basically to clean your data quickly in whatever way you prefer, instead of doing it manually. Number 16, concatenate and text join functions. And these functions are used to combine text or data in your cells. Concatenate is the older one, and textjoin is the newer one. There's also concat function, but I'll show you how these two work and why maybe the textjoin might be a better option now. But you also want to understand how to use concatenate, because some of the sheets or what have you, if you're working with some older sheets, might still have that function in them. So what you would want to do is, let's say I want to have, list of these subcategories here in one cell all together, and maybe the monthly cost listed there as well. If I just use equal and in concatenate, it's even hard to spell. Click on the formula, it tells me, okay, select the string, and then anything else you can add in between. So I'm going to say shelter, comma, and I'm going to put spacing in between. So I'm going to say maybe slash, space and slash, comma, and then another utilities, then slash. So you can see that there's a lot of manual typing here still, and I have to kind of keep track of which cell I'm doing, and it's kind of like there is a room for error here, and another slash and space and another one. Okay, you see I'm already like kind of losing my space in this, and close parenthesis, and this is how this will look. Let me wrap the text, format, wrap, so I can see. So you can see it listed like this in one cell, and I can actually do the same thing for but you see the $sign didn't show up here. So this is the way to use concatenate. But textjoin, actually I like this much better, because what you can do, you can say what kind of spacing do you want to do in between the selection of the text or ranges. So I'm going to say space slash space, and now I'm going to say ignore empty cells. I say yes, true, ignore empty cells, and I'm going to actually just grab it, the range, close parenthesis, and let's just copy the format here, and look how quickly I was able to do it. And it's easier to look at the formula, to check the formula if it's making sense, and so on. So, and I can do the same thing for, let me copy this. If you want to copy and not move the relative references, you can just go to formula bar and select it, and then click here. And now here I'm going to change it to column C. So I'm going to say C and enter. And here I have the $sign. So you see how much quicker this was. So I really like the textjoin formula better now than concatenate, but you still want to understand how the concatenate is used maybe in some older worksheets. Number 17, the convert function. And it's a useful function for certain things, like if you have data points in certain measurement and you want to convert to another one quickly, or reference in your data, like you want to have a calculation, you don't want to do it manually, because later on, let's say if something changes, you would have to remember to do that. So the convert function can convert different things like weight, distance, time, pressure, force, energy, and there's a list here. And so this is important as a reference, because you have to specify each of the delimiters, what you're converting from to what you're converting to. So it's important to have this help box opened if it's your first time using the function. So I have the average monthly temperature for Chicago here in high in Fahrenheit and low in Fahrenheit, and I want to convert it to Celsius in my worksheet. So people, maybe in Europe, on some other areas, they can understand it easier. So if I use equal convert, I'm going to specify which item I want to convert. And here first, it tells me put your starting units. What's your starting units? And I want to do a temperature. So if I look at my help here, the temperature is CF K rank row. So for us, it's F for Fahrenheit. So I'm going to say put the units in quotation marks. So I'm going to use the quotation marks here for Fahrenheit and for Celsius and press enter. And now, and let's just change the degrees. The decimal places, there's just too many decimal places right here. Let's do 2 decimal places. And you can see, you know, the formula now, it's saying convert, take the string, convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius, basically. And now I can just copy over the formula this way and that way. Number 18, CHAR function, or rather, how to reference some characters in your Google Sheets. So one thing that you might want to use in your Google Sheets, sometimes bullet points, and it's very hard to do that in Google Sheets. Sometimes if you like want to have it listed next to a list of categories or something, one way to do it is actually you can find the characters that you can use in your Google Sheets by just Googling Unicode characters. And here I have one for bullet point. It's A226. So if I'm going to copy that, if I go to my Google Sheet, say equal, and I'm going to say character, put in the number there, and here I'm going to say ampersand and I'm going to maybe add some space, and I'm going to add the string or text, and now I can just copy it over and I have it nicely formatted bullet points. Now you can use different characters too very well. Like let's say you find something more interesting and you want to design a dashboard with something more interesting. Let's say I like this bullet point. I'm going to try to use that. So I'm going to say equal character and put the code there. And we're just going to do the same thing, some space and link to the string. And you can nicely design something in your worksheet. So that's the quick way to use the CHAR function. Number 19 is email and is URL. So these functions help you identify whether the data you have is, let's say, in a format of an email or like a website. So the quick way to use it, let's say I have these email addresses for my employees and I want to double check because I found few that just did not make sense. It doesn't look like, you know, it's a email. It seems like a reference to a website. So I want to quickly check that, verify. So I would say equal is email and then reference the cell. And I'm actually going to use the absolute reference because for the column, right now I also did conditional formatting to highlight the ones that are true. And I can just copy this over on this one by checking is URL. And what we should have, at least we can have both at the same time. So anything that's false could be possibly true for the website, but they both can't be true. So I can quickly also use the conditional formatting to tell. So I can just quickly verify that, yeah, this looks like a website. This is the way to use the is email and is URL functions in Google Sheets. Number 20, IFERROR or IFNA functions. So IFERROR function, the difference between IFERROR and IFNA is just fulfills for conditions of NA errors versus IFERROR fulfills it for different types of errors. So this is more encompassing function. So this is probably the one you should use. So let's say, you know, we have this calculation here that we calculate the percentage of growth of our population for each of the states between the 2010 census data and 2022 population. But you know, the calculation works fine if we have data, but what happens if we don't have data? We get an error. And so let's say, you know, we don't have data for a few states. In that case, you know, we want to create some kind of formula to clean this up so it doesn't look you know, with these errors, especially if you're using this calculation in other calculations. If you have an error somewhere along the way, you won't be able to calculate anything else. So the way to do it is you basically type if error and specify your calculation, how you want to go about it in regular way, what you want to calculate, and then what to do if there's an error. And I'm going to just put blank space, or you can put a 0 or what have you, but 0 is different than blank, so I'm going to put blank space. And right now, if I just copy this formula down, I don't see anything because we have data. But in cases where we don't have data, let's say we don't have data for this state or this, now you can see that there is no calculation, but it looks much cleaner. And then I can use, somewhere else, let's say if I'm doing an average or some other calculation using this data from this column, I'm going to actually get a calculation versus getting another error. Because if there's an error, then the results of some other calculation will also be an error. So this is the way to basically use the IFERROR and IFNA functions in Google Sheets. Thanks so much for watching.